Hi friends, welcome back to another week in my kitchen. In this video, I'll take you through what I fed my family, and I'll be honest, this week was a tough one. I felt unmotivated, wasn't sleeping well, and on top of that, our dishwasher broke right at the start of the week. But as all you hardworking mamas know, life doesn't pause when we're running on empty. Our kids still need us, our husbands still need us, and by God's grace, we push through. My hope is that this video encourages you with some easy meals and reminds you that even in a hard week, you can still find joy in serving your family. To start off the week, I made a homemade tomato bisque. This recipe came together a few weeks ago and I've been loving it. It kind of reminds me of the tomato bisque from Panera if you've ever had that. I started by boiling baby carrots in some chicken stock until they were tender. Then I added 2 cans of San Marzano tomatoes, some garlic, salt, and some seasonings. I'll leave the full list in the description box. When everything is added, I'm going to use my immersion blender to bring everything together and smooth it out. We'll then let this sit on the stove at a medium-low heat to bring it to a simmer. While the soup simmered, I made chicken cordon bleu as our protein source for dinner. And yes, I could have done a sheet pan chicken to save on dishes, but my husband requested this meal and it is one of his favorites. So despite the added dishes and the added time, I actually found a lot of joy in being able to prepare something that I knew was going to bring him joy when he came home from work today. And let's be honest, how many times have we asked our husbands if they have any ideas for dinner? And sometimes they don't even have an opinion or they don't care. So I was grateful that my husband actually had a response, and to honor that and hopefully encourage his opinions in the future, I wanted to go ahead and make his suggestion. So to do this, I used the leftover French onion dip that we had as a base layer, and then I added ham and Swiss cheese. When all the chicken breasts were filled with their necessary fillings, I put another layer of the French onion dip and some seasoned breadcrumbs. These will then go in the oven at 400 degrees for about 20 minutes. After our soup has been simmering for a bit, we are going to add a can of coconut milk. You could also use about a cup of heavy cream if you would prefer for more richness. The chicken turned out beautifully. It was crispy, flavorful, and comforting, and it paired so nicely with the tomato bisque that I also served with some 4-cheese tortellini. It was a total win for the family. On this day, I had also prepped my weekly egg bakes. I know you've seen these in other videos, but they're such a lifesaver. When they were cooled down, I cut my egg white bake into 6 portions, which is about half a cup of egg whites each. And then my family's egg bake was cut into 12 portions. And these reheat so easily in the microwave or air fryer, which is perfect for easy mornings. I simply store these in just an airtight container, and they last us just about the whole week. Later in the week, I had apples to use up from the local orchard that we purchased them from, so I am going to make a simple applesauce. I knew I needed to get these used up before they started to go bad, so to make my applesauce, I started by peeling 8 apples, and when those will be fully peeled, we'll also core them and cut them into chunks so that we can add them to a stock pot. I really wasn't looking forward to the tedious task of peeling apples for today, but I knew I needed to get this task done before the apples went bad. So one tip that motivates me is I don't do a lot of TV, I don't watch a lot of stuff, but I did save some TV watching on my iPad for this task specifically so that it felt fun to do the task at hand. Once the apples are peeled and cored and cut, we're going to add a 1.5 cups of water and a cinnamon stick and let that come to a simmer over medium heat on the stovetop. When the apples are cooked down, we will use our immersion blender to get this nice and smooth. I am using Paula red apples. I have found this to give it a great texture and just a delicious flavor. And I ended up using a little bit too much water here. So after doing the blending, I am going to stick it back on the stovetop just to let that water evaporate a little bit more. For another dinner, I leaned into the theme of fewer dishes and made cilantro chicken and rice in the Instant Pot. To start that off, I need about 1 pound of chicken thighs, and I'm going to trim those and cut those into chunks. I'll take the cut chicken thighs and add those to some rice, to some water, and some chopped up cilantro. And then I'll add about 6 cloves of garlic. I'll put this on pressure cook for about 14 minutes. On the side, I reheated some frozen beans that I had made in the Instant Pot. Previously, I mashed those with some chicken stock and taco seasoning and made a quick refried bean dish. To finish, I blended a cilantro lime sauce, which used avocado, jalapeno, lime juice, yogurt, and then those garlic cloves from the Instant Pot. I did forget that in the first blend, so I will add those once my rice and chicken is done. This dinner was another win, and that cilantro sauce was so fresh and creamy and really tied everything together beautifully. To make this recipe even easier, you don't need to make the sauce. You could add just some salsa or make some pico. There's a lot of flexibility here, but I was happy to have done the sauce. Midweek, I set aside a sourdough baking day. So I fed my starter the night before and then prepared 2 doughs the next morning. One was a sandwich loaf and one was cinnamon rolls. I'm shaping my sandwich loaf here, and after it's shaped, I'm gonna let this sit on the counter and rise until it's just over the tip of the pan. For my cinnamon rolls, I had to roll this out into a rectangle, and then I filled the dough with some room temperature butter and spread that all around. And once everything was fully covered, I'll then sprinkle it with some brown sugar and some cinnamon, and then we will eventually roll that up into a nice loose log until we can cut that into pieces. If you're new to sourdough, one of the most intimidating things about it is figuring out the timing for everything. At least it is for me, because you have to be able to use it when your starter is the right height, and then you'll need to let your dough rise for a long period of time, and then you'll also have to do some type of second rise. Sometimes doughs require a cold ferment, so it can be a little confusing, and honestly, I don't even have it all figured out. So what I've been doing is using ChatGPT. I don't really have a sourdough cookbook that I follow. I have a few creators, but what I did was I just asked ChatGPT if I wanted to do a baking day, can you give me a couple recipes and how I should spend my day dividing those different tasks up. So that's actually what I did here. And I ended up only making the sandwich loaf and the cinnamon rolls, which you see, but they gave me a few other ideas to use the discard and when to have made those. I just ran out of time with our day, so I cut those. So it was really cool how it gave me some timestamps of being able to get everything done. And since this week, I was just feeling a little off. It took that mental decision making and all those thought processes off of my plate, and I was still able to provide something delicious to my family. Another great thing about using ChatGPT is that when it gives you the recommendations, if you don't like those recipes or the suggestions, you can just ask it for a new one, and then it will rework the schedule. So highly recommend it. After we've made a log with our cinnamon roll, we will then divide these up into 12 almost equal pieces and put those into a greased baking dish to rise throughout the day. While all of my bread was proofing, I prepped dinner, which was a Crockpot butter chicken mac and cheese. This recipe, which is from Stealth Health Life and is in my description box, uses warm spices, Greek yogurt, cream cheese, and a mix of cheeses for a creamy, flavorful pasta dish. So starting around midday, I'm using my chicken, some salted onions, garlic, tomato paste, the blend of spices, and some honey. And I'm actually cooking this on high for 3 hours, and then we will add the remaining ingredients when there's about 30 minutes left in the crock pot. Now that we are nearing dinner time, we're gonna finish up this meal by adding in some half-cooked pasta, and we're also going to add in some Greek yogurt for some creaminess. I happen to be out, so I did have to make up the difference with cottage cheese. And then we'll add in our reduced fat cream cheese and some shredded cheese. And this is what's going to make it into that mac and cheese component. And we're gonna give this a good mix and just let it sit for another 10 minutes to let all of that stuff melt and come together. So it's not the prettiest meal, but it was absolutely delicious. And just look at how beautifully all of these cheeses came together. My kids absolutely devoured this, and I served it with a side of broccoli. This was such an easy, cozy, warm meal for the fall. After dinner, my cinnamon rolls had risen and I was ready to bake them. This is how they turned out. And the next morning, I topped them with some homemade cream cheese frosting that I drizzled over and served these alongside our egg bakes. Even though the week was hard, it reminded me of God's faithfulness. In seasons where I feel weak, He gives me strength. And even small acts like making dinner or prepping breakfast become ways to serve my family and glorify Him. Thank you so much for being here. I hope this video gives you inspiration for realistic homemade meals, even in the middle of a less than perfect week.